All right, gang. So let's review Guadalajara here. All right, so we won't talk about the standard combat series rules because I'm sure everybody that plays the series has read those 10 pages of rules. But we'll talk a little bit about the scenario rules for this game. As soon as I can find them, there they are. So the scenario rules were 1, 2, 3. Actually, you don't even count the first page, so we'll say 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah, maybe 5, 4.5 pages of rules. And then you get a couple of option rules. Okay, so it was 1937, the Spanish Civil War. The Italians decided, okay, let's go end this thing. We'll just roll right through the Republican forces, and this will be done in no time. And of course, apparently, I don't know the whole details of it, but it obviously didn't happen the way they intended, or whether or not it happened at all, I don't know. The game plays fast. So you could, literally, like I said, I'm too ADD to do it, but you could sit down and play this game in one setting. It's not overwhelmed with units. Typical MMP map. This one's actually kind of light in a sense. I think one of the things that sort of narrows your movement or makes it a little easier is mobile units can't get off into the open terrain or the hills. So put it this way, if there's no railroad or a track or a secondary road or a major road, your trucks can't get off it. They can't move to it because, from what I understand, it was because the weather was so bad during this offensive or this campaign. A good spread of victory hexes. And I believe it. The victory location or conditions for the campaign are reasonable. You just got to figure out how to redirect your attacks and push, and you got to get some dice rolls. Every game's like that. One of the things I learned, I think I mentioned it earlier, was you always, every time you play a game, for the most part. And it doesn't matter what side of which team I'm focused on or whatever, you kind of want to make sure you get, and I think because of day of days, you kind of want to get better odds attacks, better than 1-to-1, because so many games today, 1-to-1 is just crap. It sort of most of them favor the defender nowadays. So, you tend to get in the habit of looking for stuff that's better than that. But this combat chart on this game, which I mentioned earlier, all right, 1-to-1 is balanced. It's a 50-50. 1-to-2 is just slightly better to the ally or to the defender, and then going up 2-1, 3-1, 4-to-1 is even better for the defender. And there's and that's it. There's not that many ratios on the combat table. Terrain effects. Okay, here's the deal. Any hill hex, defender strength is doubled. Any woods hex, defender strength is doubled. Motorized and tanks cannot go in woods. Okay? Major rivers, only infantry, not leg, but only infantry can cross it. It takes all their movement points. Okay? Mechanized units moving through clear is like, this is kind of weird, 6 movement points, but 4 to move through a hill. Maybe because there was more water in the lower ground. I don't know. And stay out of the woods. Artillery, which is weird because the Italians had massive amounts of artillery, which helped because they would get DGs on stuff. But your barrage table's not anything like some of the other games. If a unit was on a hill type hex or in a village or city of any kind, or I'm sorry, they're not called cities. They're all called villages, major and minor. You would shift a column on the barrage table. And your barrage max was 19 points, which anything from a 6 and above was DG or a loss. And then just anything 5 and less on any of the tables was no good. On any of the odds or quantities was no good. So, okay, but anyhow, the game plays pretty fast. Not a bad game at all. It's actually a pretty good game. If you want something that's light, that's in the standard combat series, and now granted, it's only one play for me, but it was enjoyable. I mean, I'm not going to do cartwheels or anything over it, but it was a good play. So I think this one was a pretty decent design for a game. I think there's balance in this one. Oddball rules for this one. The stacking in it was you can stack 6 steps in a hex. Okay. Supply. For the most part, it's your standard rules. So many movement points. Make sure you get to a road or a track or whatever, and then the track goes off the map to a supply source on the edge of the map, you know. But for the Italians, if the unit had a headquarters like these volunteer units, the headquarters first off, they had to stay on the roads, and the headquarters had to trace to the supply source, all right, whatever, that direction. And then the units of that had to trace to the supply range of the headquarters. So like this one was 7. So any of his units with the white stripe had to be within that 7 hex range. And I think they only have 3 of them. Yeah, and I think they're for all the volunteer units. Yeah, like the blue one up here has 1, the dark yellow, and the white. All the other ones they're not divisionally assigned units, and they just had like the nationalists. They just literally chased off the north edge of the map, inside their zone, their starting area, and the Italians chased off that side down there. So I mean, it's pretty simple to check and look at. Attrition is just like anything else. You mark them out of supply, then you start suffering attrition next time around. Step loss, and that was a weird one in this game. So step loss preference in this game was Italian volunteer units. When they are stacked with a regular Italian army unit and a step loss is required, the first step must come from the volunteer unit. So if you had, let's see, this unit here, who is a volunteer, has got a white stripe. And if you had him stacked with this unit here, who is not, he's a regular infantry, and this stack took a loss, you got to take it from this one first. Okay? Regardless, so like let's say this guy here, this nationalist unit, you know, you were attacking, and these 3 guys were stacked together, and the attacker had to take a loss. You know, the normal thing is the largest unit first. Well, in this case here, the Italian volunteer unit has to take the first loss, and then after that, it's whatever. Then you go to the regular standard combat series rules. This game has a different thing for armor and flamethrower. Very interesting concept in this game. Let me find one. So here is an Italian armored unit, and here's a Republican one. I don't know whether you guys will be able to see these or not. My camera will focus or not. Hopefully you can see those. All right. These units do not have strength. They have die roll modifiers for on the attack side and on the defense side. And you apply those to your attack or your defense. Now here's the cool thing. If this unit is stacked with that infantry, all right, and he is attacking this Republican unit, all right, and they both have tanks in it, this one battle actually becomes 2 battles. What happens is your 2 tank units will end up fighting each other, and the remaining parts of the stack will fight each other. So you have a table called, you have 2 tables for tanks, tank versus tank combat, down on the left side there, all right, and then you have tank after combat table. All right, now how do these work? All right, so obviously that's tank versus tank. So you roll on that chart 1 dice for each side, and you'll apply the effects. If they get disabled, you put them over in this box called disabled tanks. On that nationality's next tank repair phase, you roll a dice. If it's a 5 or 6, he's repaired, and he comes back in on his reduced side as like a reinforcement. All right. All right, so let's say this stack here with this tank attacks that Republican infantry unit there. Well, he doesn't have a tank. So now he adds his modifier to the die roll of this attack. Then, after the attack, you use the after tank or after combat tank table or tank after combat table. All right, and you apply the same effect. He might be disabled. He might take a step loss or whatever. And you got flamethrower units that work the same way. The only difference is these guys can't take a step loss from the regular combat or barrage, whereas the flamethrower engineer units can. And there's only, I think, 1. Yeah. Here's a flamethrower engineer unit. All right. All right. So the game's not overly fancy. It's got a couple little nice side rules of its own. Movement, you have motorized, tank, and leg. Artillery barrage is pretty much the same way. Air power is pretty much like most of the SCS games. You can, really though, unless you're using optional rules, only the Republicans get air power. And, you could add them to the attack or defense, or you can use them for barrage. If you use them for barrage like artillery, each one is worth 5 barrage points, but you can't mix those with artillery. And you can do air interdiction, which I almost really never do that. You have an armored unit on here. Oh, I'm sorry. These plus minus armored units or flamethrowers or recon units, they can never be alone. They have to be stacked with a regular combat unit. All right? Keep that in mind if you play. Reserves, like anything else. You have trucks. Trucks are just like a transport. These guys here if the trucks are inherent to a specific division, they can only haul that's a lot of movement points, because 14 is trucks are the only thing on these secondary roads that get half movement. So that's quite a distance. Can't fight with these things. You can't move next to an enemy zone control. So this is kind of like a strategic movement marker in a way, but with a limit. So they served a good purpose of moving forces across the map pretty quickly. Like I said, they have no combat ability. Unit reconstitution. So there's, you have your reinforcement schedule, but every time one of these units gets destroyed, infantry units, you roll a dice, and if you roll a 5, you put him on the turn record chart 5 turns away from the turn you're currently on, and that's when on his reduced side, and that's when he comes back in as a reinforcement. Okay? If you roll a 1, the unit's permanently destroyed, and that's only for infantry. So that's how your unit reconstitution works. And you have some modifiers for depending on what nationality they're from. Headquarters, I already went over that. Artillery spotters is just like anything else, with the exception of down here near Bruega. If you have these binocular hexes here, if a unit is in there, they can spot enemy units for artillery 3 hexes away. All right. Extreme combats. Yeah, all combat units that are rounded odds worse than 1 to 2 apply an automatic result of A2R2. And anything stronger than 4 to 1, you resolve it on the 4 to 1 column. All retreats are mandatory. You cannot take, and I missed this too on one of the turns, you cannot exchange step losses. You have to retreat, which then in fact enforces the zone of control. If you retreat to an enemy zone of control, you're going to take a step loss anyhow. Let's see. And one of the rules that I threw it out as an optional rule, was the separation line, which I believe is this thing here. Where's my chart? Where's my chart? It's not even on the chart. I think this is the separation line right along the river there. You had certain units had to stay above, certain units had to stay below. Yeah, read the rules when you play it. You can do that yourself. All right, so morale and panic was the other interesting rule in here. Like I say, that applied only to the 3 Italian volunteer divisions. They're marked over here, and like I said, I only had one that got hit for 5 steps. I just couldn't apply any damage to the Italians. Matter of fact, the only ones that did were because they tried to push into this pocket here, and they would push a unit back, and you trapped in a hole there, and hit by 4 units or 4 stacks. So, all right, so Guadalajara, standard combat series from Multiman, published in 2006, I think I said. Smooth playing. You could play it in probably 3 or 4 hours by yourself. Really, you could, if you just stick your nose into it and go. I thought it was a fun game. Probably not one that I'll play multiple times, but if I had to get it out again, it wouldn't faze me to play it again. And pretty smooth, not overly burdened with rules. All right. So Guadalajara Multiman. If you got it, get it out, throw it on the table. I haven't seen too many people talking about it at all. So if you get it out and play it, hey, send me a message. Let me know what you thought. All right. Thanks for watching, gang. We'll get back to you soon with something else.